I would presume that it was an important enough text to register it in the Vatican, because only 10%, scholars tell us, of the texts written and sent out by Innocent III, only 10% were ever recorded in the Registra Vaticana, the Vatican registers. The other 90%, if we don't have the original, then we don't have the text at all. Some other examples. So the brief, for example, Ad Militantis Ecclesiae, issued on the 20th of August, 1599, that's the brief of Clement VIII, issued to John Baptist of the Conception after spending kind of 2.5 years in Rome working out the Spanish discalced reform. This is the document that approves the Spanish discalced reform, and we have the original in the archives at San Carlino in Rome. So that's interesting. Public and private documents. Let's take a look at the first. Let's take just a sample. The first, the agreement, transaction between the founder and the Archbishop of Arles, made in November of 1203. We have the original. We don't have it. I mean, the French government has it, because at the French Revolution, the folks of the Revolution went to the religious houses, pillaged their libraries and archives, and brought their materials either to the central French government repository, the National Archives, or to the departmental archives, like the state archives, or to the municipal archives. So Trinitarian stuff can be found in these 3 places. But we'll go into a few more details on that at another time. This transaction between John de Matha, this agreement between John de Matha and the Archbishop of Arles, was made in November of 1203. The original is extant. We have the original. It's in the Les Archives des Bouches du Rhône, which is down in Marseille. It's the departmental archives. It's not the city of Marseille archives. Les Archives du département des Bouches du Rhône. At any rate, there were 3 seals on this original document. Unfortunately, only the seal of the Archbishop remains, Archbishop Michael. The seal of the chapter of canons that agreed to this transaction, this agreement, is missing, and the seal of John de Matha is missing. Not everything is lost, as we'll see when we take up the life of John de Matha. Copies are our friends. I give you several other examples of Trinitarian, the sources for Trinitarian information. First of Châteauneuf-les-Martigues. Yeah, let me take up number 2, a donation, the grant of Rufus of Châteauneuf-les-Martigues, made in 1208. We're going to see this document again. But at any rate, this Rufus, I let his name in Latin, Knight of Châteauneuf-les-Martigues, made to Felicius, minister of the House of the Holy Trinity in Marseille, for all the brothers of the Order of the Holy Trinity, present and future, made this donation. This donation was made in 1208. There are 3 copies of the notarized copy of the original. So it's pretty solid. And notice the name of the minister of this House of Marseille, Felicius, not Felix, but Felicius. We'll take that up when we take a study of Felix of Valois. The privilege in the letter of Gonsalvo of Segovia, issued between 1203 and 1209. I don't have my notes on that one, so we'll have to skip that one. But anyway, how about the letter of Archbishop Yehul of Tours, issued during the first half of the 13th century? He issued a letter very much in favor of the Trinitarians. These letters, there's more than one, but we have only the text of one. These letters were issued sometime between 1229 and 1248. So it's early on. We'll see this when we take up the 13th century evaluation of the Trinitarian order. We don't have the original, but we do have a copy in Martin's Thesauri Anecdotum, published in Paris in 1717. So it's not a primary source. It's kind of midway between primary and secondary. But anyway, let's take a look at some legislative documents. The rule, the papal bull Operante Divinae Dispositiones of the 17th of December, 1198. We don't have the original. We have the Vatican registered copy. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't know the text of the original rule of the order, which would be a definite loss to us. But we've got the letter of Innocent III from the 17th of December approving the rule and giving the text in the body of his text of approbation. So we're very, very fortunate in that. Remember, they only recorded at the most 10%. In the Vatican registers, they only recorded 10% of the letters that were sent out by Innocent III. I'm looking at how much time I've used up on this recording. Constitutions. The statutes and constitutions approved by the General Chapter for the whole order in 1429. These are really the first general constitutions that we have. We'll take those up when we move into the 15th century. But just to give you an idea of the texts and the types of texts. A directory, the General Directory of the Order, published in Rome in 1971. This is the first general directory in the history of the order. It was, I don't want to call it an invention, but a result, let me call it that. That's a less threatening kind of word. A result of Vatican II and the return to the sources and the writing up of new constitutions, which we did and we approved in 1969 at the Extraordinary General Chapter in Granby. Constitutions were supposed to, we were instructed by the Vatican that constitutions were supposed to be type of general principles for the order. And articles of the Constitution can only be changed by the Holy See after the request made by a congregation or an order, Trinitarians, and after a series of general chapters have turned it into an experiment and then approved it, and then finally. It takes about 18 years, 12 to 18 years, to change a point of the constitutions, and only the Holy See can ratify the change. General Directory is the application of the constitutions to concrete situations throughout the order or in a given jurisdiction or situation. General Directory points can be changed by the order itself in General Chapter. So there was this new concept of constitutions, that they were to be principles for living the Trinitarian life. The application of the principles were to be put in the general directory. So 1971 marked the first time in the history of the order that we have the general directory. Statutes, for example, Los Estatutos de la Congregación General de España, approved at the interprovincial chapter in 1594. They're important because the three provinces in Spain got together, had a interprovincial general chapter, and Article 31 of those statutes state that in each of the provinces, 2 or 3 houses are to be set aside where religious who want a more austere way of life can go and create it and find it. This was the beginnings of the Spanish Recollection, which gave birth also to the Spanish Discalced Reform. So their sources. We do have these statutes. We're lucky enough to have them. The fourth kind of document are liturgical documents. The breviary that we have from 1514, 1515. There's a copy at San Carlino in Rome. There was a copy of this breviary in London. But twice, while I was at the British Library, I asked for it on 2 different occasions. I asked for it and always got the same answer. Missing in action. Missing since World War II. I guess it was destroyed or whatever in the bombing of World War II, or maybe somebody made off with it for safekeeping. Who knows? But it's no longer in the British Library collection. A second, so that's the breviary itself. The breviary is interesting because it presents a calendar. And there's one page, page 64, folio 64, which is extremely interesting. But we'll take that up when we take up the accounts of the foundation of the order. The calendar. The first liturgical calendar of the order, the Ordinationes Sanctorum et Sanctarum, the calendar of Sanctorum, men saints, and Sanctarum, women saints, was approved by the General Chapter meeting at Cerfois in 1247. So it was approved by the General Chapter meeting at Cerfois in 1247, and it has the calendar of feasts for the order. Interesting. St. Augustine is called our Blessed Father. Don't get too excited, but he's referred to as our Blessed Father. His feast day is celebrated as a solemnity with an octave, and if I'm not mistaken, I do have a copy in the files here, and we'll take it up when we talk about the liturgy. If I'm not mistaken, the transfer of his relics is also celebrated as a feast of the Trinitarian order. That's what's in there. What's missing, of course, is any mention of Saint John de Matha. We're back in the year 1247. There is no mention of Saint Felix of Valois either. This is an important element will be an important element in our study of the question of Felix of Valois, because apparently there was a body of Felix Confessor, buried or kept at Cerfois. Another avant-goût, what do we call it? Appetizer for you, a foretaste of things to come. So stay tuned. Ceremonial. We've got a ceremonial from the 13th and 14th century called Defuncto Ministro. It's almost a copy over of the ceremonial Defuncto Abate on the death of the abbot, which was the ceremonial used by the canons regular of the Abbey of Saint Victor in Paris. Defuncto Ministro, they changed the title on the death of the minister. So it's interesting to compare those two texts. There's a missal that was used by Robert Guéguen, the necrology of the French Discalced, published at Aix-en-Provence in 1707 by Father Ignace de Saint Antoine. There's the ritual. When I entered the order in 1962, the Rituale Fratrum Discalciatorum of the Order of the Holy Trinity, published at in Turin and Rome in 1955. That was the ritual that was used. So we have these liturgical documents. Excuse me. Some proceedings. The acts of the general chapters, congregations and councils. We have the acts of the general chapter celebrated in the capital house of the order, Cerfois, in 1765. 1765, the French Revolution is only 20 plus years down the road. They can feel the vibes. And so this general chapter of the, if you want to call it, the ancient observance, or now that there's a discalced observance, this would be the general chapter of the calced observance, is important. The acts of the provincial chapters, congregations, and councils. For example, here in the United States, the official transcript of the minutes of the ordinary provincial chapter elective session, February 25th, 1974. The elective session. We used to celebrate the provincial chapter. Well, first of all, the first time we had a provincial chapter was 1971. Father Bernard Harding was elected provincial. We used to have the provincial chapters in two phases, the elective and the programmatic. Now it's